Alright folks, we're here today doing, it's not technically a playthrough because I actually recorded the video first and then I went back and recorded the audio afterwards, so it's almost kind of like a player's commentary of sorts, I guess is the best way to describe it. But anyway, our game of the week is going to be called Knuckle Bash from Toaplan, the guys who made so many great shoot-em-ups over the 1980s and 1990s. Same guys that did Batsugan and what else? Grindstormer, a couple other ones. I believe they did Zero Wing, but I think that's one of their more overrated games. But needless to say, they made a lot of great games. Truxton, for example. But obviously, this is not a shoot 'em up. This is actually a side-scrolling beat 'em up from 1993 from Toaplan. Distributed in America and Europe by Atari Games, called Knuckle Bash. And you know, I absolutely love this genre. You know, it's one of those, you know, next to shmups and top-down shooters, beat 'em ups are probably my favorite old-school arcade genre. I think it's especially so because when you think about it, you know, these types of games never really translated to the 3D era. You know, it's one of those things where you look at games like The Bouncer and Fighting Force, even, you know, Spike Out, they just really didn't translate that well. You know, they didn't have the same, you know, atmosphere and fun and, you know, overall sort of, you know, ambiance and well, a whole bunch of other stuff there. I'm getting high. I'm not even talking about the game. But yeah, like I was saying, you know, beat 'em ups just so fun, just complete, you know, style over substance, and there's no way around it. This game does not have a very in-depth combat system. You know, it's basically just you hit one button, it does all the moves. But you know what it lacks in mechanical depth, I think it makes up for by having a lot of character. And you know, obviously, we've already seen a lot of really great character designs already. But just, you know, the general pace and structure of the game, I think is also pretty noteworthy because you're not just, you know, going down long corridors, beating up random goons until you get to a boss fight. Pretty much every fight in this game is in and of itself a boss fight. And of course, you know, the character design, I got to go back to that, just outstanding. You get 3 playable characters in the beginning. You get the guy dressed up like Elvis. You get the guy who looks like Sting. Or I think he looks more like Brian Bosworth than Stone Cold, one of the best, you know, B-action movies of the early 1990s. And of course, you got this, you know, generic red luchador guy. But yeah, they all play more or less the same. They do have special moves. But as far as, you know, just the way they control, I mean, they're all pretty much the same speed, same power. There actually are 2 more characters you pick up along the way, but we'll get to those when we get there. Alright, so yeah, we got this guy beating up just a random pro wrestling punk, and I like the attention to detail in this game. It's something you're going to really notice. Makes it stand out from its competitors. You know, I like the guys around the ring, very New Japan-esque in many ways. Alright, so what we got going on here is something I think is probably kind of a pointless feature. Basically, in between, you know, stages, it's like 3 or 4 points in the game where basically you just have to press the red button as fast as you can, and if you push it enough, you get extra life. But even if you fail, you get some extra life, so just not as much, because why would they do that? Alright, so another thing I like about this game is that it really kind of tells you what the Japanese inherently think about American society, to where, I didn't bring this up yet, canonically I believe this game takes place in Chicago. So technically right now you're a luchador who walks on to Soldier Field and starts beating up the 1992 Chicago Bears, some of which would happen every single day in the United States. But it gets weirder, and we'll see that a little bit later on. Alright, so this is the Sting slash Brian Bosworth guy I was telling you about earlier. Kind of like their default marquee guy. Not a whole lot to say about that. He's basically just kicks people. It also kind of reminds me of Glacier. You know, that one kickboxing guy from WCW in the mid-1990s. Kind of a forerunner there. One thing you will notice about the enemies in this game, they do tend to spam a lot of the same attacks, and a lot of them are kind of unavoidable. Especially that's true of the end boss, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to that proverbial bridge. Alright, so remember when I was saying things are about to get weird? Well, trust me, they're about to get really, really weird here. Because you're at Soldier Field, all of a sudden, oh, what's that? You fall through a hole in the ground, kind of eerily reminiscent of The Dark Knight Rises. And bam, what's underneath Soldier Field? That's right, a underground Persian sex dungeon where you have to fight the Iron Sheik with the scimitar. Yeah, another thing I love about this game is there's so much like brazen referentialism to like pro wrestling, and well, you'll see actually other video games come up very shortly. But obviously, you got characters here clearly modeled after the Iron Sheik. You've got a guy who looks like Big Van Vader coming up a little bit later on. You got a couple of luchadors who I think are definitely stressing some intellectual property right laws across the global scale, but what do you expect from the Japanese? They just don't care. Alright, so like I said, the attention to detail in this game is really fascinating, because if you look around, like, who's the guy like checking his watch up front in the white suit just hanging out there? You got a woman drinking Cosmopolitans with the Tiger, and of course you got these guys hanging around like a furnace at ringside. I'm not sure what they're doing with their hands, but it does not look like it's the most sanitary behavior, I'll put it that way. Alright, so yeah, as far as the combat system, again, like I said, nothing terribly, too nuanced, but it gets the job done. I mean, it's very basic, very satisfying. It's got some muscle behind it. I mean, when you punch somebody in this game, you feel it. It's a lot more visceral than some of its contemporaries, even though I really do wish you had more moves at your disposal. That said, I do like the throws and holds here. I mean, you can pull off some very pro wrestling reminiscent behavior, and I'm not going to complain about that for any reason. Alright, so wow, these boss fights go on forever. Or really, they don't go on forever, it's just they spam the same move over and over again and you really can't get near them. That said, I still like it. I think it's a really fun and sort of a contrarian genre type game, from 19, which was really a great year for beat 'em ups. I mean, you had stuff like, Violent Storm, a couple other ones I think are pretty good. Night Slashers I think came out in 1993, so it was a good year for esoteric beat 'em ups. Alright, so a couple other things about this game. There's two game modes, but really, they don't really do much. Basically, it just kind of changes the order of the stages. I didn't really see like a difficulty spike or anything, but in case you're wondering, it does increase I guess, a little bit of the longevity of the game if you want to do that, but whatever. Alright, so, God, I love the music in this game, and the cutscenes are just so fabulous. Like, this is literally like playing an early 1990s straight-to-video Don the Dragon Wilson movie, and it's great. And, with all this Marvel stuff going on, wouldn't it be great to see this become like a full-fledged, like, intellectual property? I mean, movies about, ninjas and football players joining forces to beat up brazen homophobic stereotypes. Oh, and trust me, if you think that's bad, we haven't gotten to the bottom of the barrel yet. It gets way worse a little bit later on. But yeah, at this point in the game, obviously we're playing the original Japanese version. In the American and European release, I believe they specifically referred to this as being Chicago. So, apparently this is what the Japanese think Chicago is like. You go to hotels, you get attacked by the bellhops, and there's even weirder stuff coming up, but I want that to be a surprise, so we'll save that for you. So yeah, other things about this game. Not a whole lot of stuff you can do with the environment. I mean, you can beat up cars, but there's no weapons. So we're not doing Streets of Rage or Final Fight or anything like that. It's just very, very straightforward in terms of the combat. Yeah, and I love his victory dance, for a hyper-masculine football player. Kind of a very, 8th grade girlish sort of celebratory behavior, but who am I to judge? So like I said, the character design for this game is just great, and how can you not love any game where you get to beat up a bunch of bellhops that throw rolling carts at you as projectiles? And like I said, another thing about one of the more fun things with the game is watching the behavior in the background. Like these guys who in the background, they're watching like a karate death fight happen, and they're just still on the phone booking reservations and kind of cheering it on. Just a very unique thing that I think sets this game apart. It has a lot of humor to it, but then again, it's that weird early 90s Japanese humor where I don't know if it's like supposed to be like ironic or not, but it certainly doesn't feel like it's of the modern era. We'll give them that. Not a very politically correct game. Alright, so it looks like we're fighting that pro wrestling punk guy again here, and we got a server pirouetting and a bunch of what appears to be very wealthy white people drinking, and I think that's Hitler in the background, if you see him on the side there, on the far left, with the mustache. Yeah, I don't really know what they're trying to do as far as aesthetics there, but whatever. Still a fun game. And as you can see behind me, I believe it's supposed to be Lake Michigan, and we'll get a closer look at that in the next stage. And there's that great celebration again. I gotta love that one. Well, we got a plot twist. Hold on before we take on Jean-Claude Van Damme and Hillbilly Jim. So this one's actually one of the easier boss fights in the game. You just kind of spam the same moves over and over again. And how about that? I mean, that guy's got a pretty good spear. I mean, that's very Roman Reigns-esque, if you ask me. But yeah, pretty much the same as in any other beat 'em up from the genre and the time frame. You know, you just exploit what you can exploit. You know, corner them, hit them over and over again. I do that a little bit later on with one of the final, I think it's like the penultimate boss in the game, where I just show you a cheap shot on him. So yeah, back to character design. Whoever would have imagined doing like a Streets of Rage ripoff with an Elvis impersonator? Well, they did over at Toaplan. That's why these guys are brilliant. Alright, so we got another one of these mini games going on here. Frankly, not a whole lot to say. I guess they just want you to like form calluses on your fingers. It's one of those things where there's a lot of things about arcade games from the 90s that I miss, but really random generic fun stuff like this, not one of them. And of course I failed that one because who has time? Alright, so remember when I was talking about how this game had a little bit of a homophobic overtone earlier? Okay, well now it stops being undertone and becomes full-fledged overtone right here. Trust me, it's about to get... Yeah. So obviously you're fighting this weird... I don't even know how to describe, like a Chip and Dale dancer wearing lipstick, and his platoon of tall, thin, like almost like unhealthily thin, like cronies who appear to hump you into submission. Like I said, you know, it's one of those things where not a very PC game. It's the kind of thing that was rampant in beat 'em ups from the early 1990s. I mean, it's the same thing that happened in Streets of Rage 3, or at least the Japanese version. We had to fight like a Leather King and his gaggle of merry homosexual gang members. So we got the frogmen here to kind of spice it up a little bit. And again, like I said, you gotta look at the stuff in the background. If you go over here on the far left, you'll see what appears to be a guy taking his girlfriend out on a date to fish in Lake Michigan, which is something that does not happen in real life. I'm not even sure they let you do that in Chicago, but like I said, you know, these games are such a wonderful insight into how other cultures view the American experience. Like, I'm sure the Japanese game designers actually thought this was what happens in Chicago. That you actually have, you know, like these pro wrestling karate death fights between, you know, transgender street gangs on docks, and it happens all the time. So yeah, one thing I just now kind of noticed about that, if you look at the character screen when you defeat the guy there that we just defeated, kind of reminds me of Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. But they may have swapped his visage and just put purple hair and lipstick on it. But not in the game. I mean, that little flashing photo we saw. Alright, so now we're fighting a bunch of midget pro wrestlers inside a ship for literally no reason whatsoever. I mean, if you're looking for a coherent plot, it's just not going to come your way in this one. I'm terribly afraid. But overall, you know, like I said, the games themselves, you know, the structure, you don't have long stretches where you're just fighting up really easy tomato can enemies. It's basically kind of like Shadow of the Colossus in a way, where everything is either a sub-boss fight or a full-fledged boss fight. So it gives it a very unique tempo. I mean, you get straight to the action. There's no filler. There's no points in the game where you're just like, okay, well, I'm kind of getting bored here, beating up the random guy and rain slickers over and over again. Where's the fun stuff? Where's my karate fight against an evil Blanca primate ripoff in Ken Stage from Street Fighter 2? You're wondering that. When's it going to happen? Well, it's going to happen literally right now. Okay, when I said Ken Stage from Street Fighter 2, I mean it. Good lord, that is just like the most brazen, like, copyright infringement I've seen in a long time. I mean, there's really no way around it. That's like the exact same, like, thing. And of course we're fighting a leprechaun, gorilla, gnome, Blanca ripoff. I got nothing, you know, there's no rhyme or reason. But like I said, this stuff would make such a fantastic movie. You know, a movie about, you know, ninjas and football players teaming up to fight evil gorillas on docks. Who wouldn't get behind that? And also we're seeing another of the tried and true formulas of the genre, and that is the boss fight spamming the unavoidable move over and over again. But at least you get in. You figure it out after a while. The idea is to get close and trap them in a corner and just unload with a barrage of offense, which I think is very, you know, Art of War-esque. I think it's good advice, not just in video games, but just life in general. That's right, throw that monkey against a barrel in the corner. So, oh, we got this stage again. And like I was saying earlier, there's two game modes. And the other one, it just kind of shakes up the order to where the football stage is like one of the second to last, or like maybe even the third to last, I believe. And you have the hotel stuff as the very first stage in the game. So it does extend the replay value a little bit, but not nothing major. It's more or less the same game. Alright, so now we're in what appears to be Chinatown of Chicago, and I'm not really sure what it says in the background. Kyoto? Yeah, I'm not even going to try. And I have no idea what the kanji in the background means, but it's probably something hilarious for us American audiences. So we got the guys, you know, spit roasting a pig over there on the far right. We got more guys in tank tops that are all muscular and bald and beating you up. Is that another like gay stereotype they're throwing at us? These guys supposed to be like bears or something? They do have very dainty overhand karate chops. And I like the fact that it looks like he's like bashing your head against the pillar there, but it's just a random move he does. Just very fortuitous that I parked my character there when he did it. But yeah, they just don't make games like this anymore. Literally. I mean, when was the last time you actually saw like a real, like, honest-to-goodness 2D beat-em-up brawler that was actually not meant to be ironic, but actually meant to, you know, be fun and good and entertaining? I wonder why that never made the translation to 3D, because so many other genres did. You know, the top-down Zelda games did, platformers did. Even to some extent, I think shoot-em-ups did with games like Ian Hander, but for whatever reason, the side-scrolling beat-em-up just never, you know, made that translation. Which gives it really a cool nostalgic appeal too, so I'm not going to complain too much. Alright, and here we're taking on the Undertaker, I think, one with a knife. There's two of them. Like I said, just, you know, brazen, you know, character rip-offs of, you know, famous movie characters from the early 90s and pro wrestlers. So if you like referential humor, you get a lot of it in this game. Toaplan, of course, is not around. They've been defunct for like 20 years, so I'm not actually sure who owns the rights to this game. I want to say maybe like Atari would, but I'm not certain. But the IP's there, folks. If you're looking for a brand to resurrect, I think this would be one to do. Alright, so now we're taking on this ninja guy who can turn into a tornado, and he has a really, really sweet swinging neck breaker. You'll see here momentarily. And of course, one of those weird things, you know, these, you're fighting in like a monastery. So you have all these monks who are doing their daily prayers and then turning around and celebrating the wanton violence going on behind them, which seems to be sort of a transgression against their belief system, but hey, maybe it's just something that happens. It's the art of war, right? As far as the character design here, and this is the last guy that you can beat who joins your flock, and when I said all the characters more or less play the same, they do, but this one seems a little bit more overpowered. I think he's got that neck breaker there I was telling you about, which is pretty easy to apply and does a lot of damage. So you can kind of spam that for the rest of the enemies, and the tornado move is just, you know, hell on earth. Try avoiding that one. So, in the grand pantheon of beat-em-ups, I think this is definitely one of the hidden gems out there. I mean, there are so many games that came out that, you know, tried something new that had some really good hooks. And of course, we all know the really great ones, the IPs, the Konami ones, the Capcom ones. But there were so many, you know, really fun hidden gems like that. And this is kind of a weird thing that happened, where basically it's the whole genre prerequisite where as soon as you like put in a new quarter, like a little bit of damage happens to the enemy. So apparently when I put in a new quarter on this one, that was the death blow registered to the boss. So how about that? Alright, so here's our full assortment of characters. We've got, I just don't notice the blonde guy kind of looks like Johnny Depp a little bit. It would not surprise me if they just ripped off his image for the game. Alright, so the opening of this stage is kind of Double Dragon-esque, and of course, remember this game is supposed to be taking place in Chicago. You know, the part of Chicago with all of the pagodas in it. I think it's right next to, where is it? Right next to Wrigley Field, of course. That's where it would be. So now we're fighting a guy who looks suspicious like a Oni Boba demon. Or Ani Baba, my bad. Sorry, I'm not good with pronunciations. So basically, I'm not sure you're supposed to be able to do that, but I do it anyway. Because it's hilarious to give a guy a swinging neck breaker off a pagoda to his demise. I don't think it does any more damage than any other move, but it's just really, really fun to watch. Oh, take that. You're eliminated from the Royal Rumble, guy. Oh, and speaking of wrestling references, there's a great one when we reveal who this character truly is. I like the fact that they're revealing to be human beings and they're clearly doing like supernatural things. Oh, and you just missed it there. That great jumping, flipping, reverse STO. Man, that is a fan. Paul Burchill wish you could do a C4 like that. But yeah, you're about to see this guy revealed as yet another pro wrestling proxy. Get ready to be shocked. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it in real life? The mysterious Oni Baba wrestler is... Oh, look at that. It's Antonio Inoki. Making an unauthorized cameo appearance in this game. So, how about that? Alright, and this is the last boss fight in the game, the final stage. In which you take on a guy who looks suspiciously like the combination of Big Van Vader and Dr. Robotnik, who has a pig snout stapled to his face. I mean, you really... I don't think I ever would have put those two together. I don't think that idea would have ever crossed my mind in a million years, so you know you're working with geniuses here. Brazen, just bizarre criminal geniuses. So we're just spamming the same move over and over again because, hey, if it works, it just plain works. And that's kind of the traditional beat 'em up thing, you know. If all else fails, just keep them at a distance, find the right pixel, and then break out the jumping attack. Which I'm definitely not exploiting here at all. Anyway, that rolling Fat Man attack is absolutely unavoidable. You know, he's a character who already takes up like a quarter of the screen. So he starts doing that, forget it, it's just not happening. That said, you know, I think it actually is kind of an easy game. I mean, you gotta put in a lot of quarters because some cheap attacks, but, you know, it doesn't really take that many hits to put down the opponents, and you can just tackle them like that and finish them off quite easy. And that, folks, is the game. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, was there a story somewhere? Well, I mean, there was technically, but because it's in kanji, as you see there, we really can't put it together. But you can look up the American version on the YouTubes. Apparently, Pig Van Vader there, he was running some illegal street gang, and they were trying to take over the world, or whatever. So I'm not really sure what the backstory of how these guys all came together was, but they did. And they saved Chicago. So we get to live to see another day. So yeah, that's Knuckle Bash for you. You know, it's kind of very much a product of its time. It's one of those things where you can beat it all in about 20 minutes. Sadly, there was never a sequel, but I think we need to work on that, because if there's anything a post-Trump world needs, it's games about ninjas and football players fighting evil.